China has successfully placed the last of its BeiDou Navigation System satellites in orbit. Well, the system has been under development for decades and includes satellites in both geostationary and non-geostationary orbits. With more satellites than America's GPS system, BeiDou offers greater accuracy and can compete with Russia's GLONASS and Europe's Galileo systems. So what is BeiDou and what are the potential applications? How does it differ from the existing global positioning systems? And what impact it will have on economy and the country's ability to develop technologies? To talk about these issues and more, I'm pleased to be joined by Dr. Yang Yuguang from the China Aerospace Science and Industry Corporation, Jianghui Geng, professor at the Global Navigation Satellite System Research Center at Wuhan University, Tony Zhang, our CGTN correspondent, and Professor Sir Martin Stevenson, Executive Chairman of Surrey Space Center and Surrey Satellites Technology Limited. That is our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Zhou Yue. Let me start with you, Yuguang. For starters, can you explain what the BeiDou Navigation Satellite System is?
Well, the BeiDou system is a very big satellite constellation which composed of about more than 30 satellites. It can provide very accurate positioning and timing service, and also it can provide short text messages. It has already had 3 generations. The first generation, we use the technology with only 2 satellites. We can use only 2 satellites to provide the positioning service. But it needs the user to send signals to the satellite. So the quantities for users is limited. From the second generation, we choose a principle very similar to GPS, GLONASS, and Galileo. So it, theoretically speaking, it can provide services to infinite numbers of users. And for the third generation, we can provide services to the whole globe.
Why do we need a global navigation system if we can navigate our ships and vehicles just within China and in Asia?
Well, you know, for a big country like China, it is very important for developing this kind of we call space infrastructure to ensure the safety and also ensure the development of high technology. And the second, because you know that China's economy has already extended to the whole world. The whole world, we can call it one single village. So it is very important for China not only providing the positioning and timing service to the Asia-Pacific regions, which has been done by the second generation of the BeiDou system. But in the future, if we can provide service to the whole globe, including other regions outside the Asia-Pacific, it will be very useful not only to China, but also to the whole world.
But we understand the BeiDou system is a self-developed ingenious invention. It is the 4th system in the world to provide this kind of service, alongside the United States GPS, GLONASS from Russia, and Galileo in Europe. Really, does the world need 4 different navigation systems?
Theoretically speaking, we can use only one single system to provide services to the users on the ground. But you know, according to the basic principle of the navigation technology, if we want to more accurate positioning and timing, you should have more satellites. You can have at least 4 satellites to provide these kind of services. But if you look, above your sky, if you have 10 or more satellites, you will have more accurate location. So if we can have not only the GPS, GLONASS, and Galileo, if we also have the BeiDou system, the user on the ground will have more choices, and also they will have the positioning and timing more accurate. And you know that in recent years, the downstream developers has already developed these kind of chips, which can be embedded in such as a mobile phone and other devices to combine the signals, all these systems together.
So it means that they can have more precise navigation services because they can use all of the systems at the same time, you mean?
Exactly. If we have more satellites, for instance, your accuracy will be different if you only have 10 satellites. But if you have 20 satellites, above the sky, you will have more accurate position. And also, this will be more reliable. If one system has some malfunction, you can choose another system.
But besides the applicability, what is the necessity for a homegrown navigation system? Some people say a navigation system is the basic infrastructure for a nation's not only economy but also military and national security uses. Does that also serve as a very important purpose?
Exactly. Both the applications in our daily life and also in the national security are all the necessity, the reasons to develop this kind of navigation system, especially for big countries. You can see that not only China, but US, Russia, and Europe, and also besides these countries, India and Japan has also developed their local or regional navigation satellite system or navigation satellite enhancement.
And can you tell us the compatibility of these different systems? For example, if my car is mounted with BeiDou, is it also compatible with GPS? Can those systems work in sync?
Well, that depends on the chip you used. You know that for historical reasons, most of the users choose GPS because GPS has the longest developing history. But in recent years, as I've mentioned, because since the second generation of BeiDou system, we choose a similar principle methodology like the GPS, GLONASS, and Galileo system. So all these systems are possible to be combined together. For realizing this goal, we choose these kind of chips. The chips can be developed by any developer. So if the chip has the algorithm embedded to analyze the signals from the not only GPS but also BeiDou, it can combine the signals together and calculate your position and time more accurately.
All right. We also collected some questions and also opinions on the China's homegrown technology of navigation. Let's take a look. This internet user says, so does that mean we don't have to use GPS any longer? So you want, of course, if I use both systems, I have to pay for both systems. But if I have BeiDou or somebody has GPS, does he or she has the choice to only use one system that's cheaper?
I think it will be a wise choice to use both systems. You see that I have mentioned because of the technology we used by BeiDou and the GPS, if you have more satellites, you will be more accurate and more reliable.
Do I have to pay more if I use two systems at the same time?
You can choose them at the same moment. For instance, you can receive the signals of, for instance, 20 satellites. And because you know that some of the signals are better, and you can choose the better ones. Maybe some part from the GPS, some from BeiDou. So your accuracy will be better if you choose the best ones inside these
But does it make economic sense? I don't have to pay for those services, do I?
Well, you see that the signals are emitted to all nations to the ground, and it's free of charge. The only charge is from the applications. You see that for the chips you develop, you should pay for the some kind of technology know-how and other charges for using this technology. But for the end users, you cannot build that.
Okay, we go to our reporter Tony Chan in Thailand. Well, Thailand is among the first countries to have adopted the technology of BeiDou system. So Tony, of course, BeiDou system, the adoption is seen here in China as a big part of the Belt and Road Initiative, providing navigation systems for those countries involved. What is the economic importance of this for Thailand?
I think potentially it's huge. Thailand, I think, has been looking at the future, and we've seen a considerable shift away over the past decade towards China, because I think the Thais see their future, particularly economically, very much pegged to China. That said, I think at this stage, if you went around here in Thailand and said, you know, did you know about the satellite launch and this new system that's going to take over from GPS, people would be pretty perplexed. It's not really operating here. But the fact that Thailand got involved in this in 2013, has been involved in the development There is an Earth station in Chonburi, which is going to be one of 200, I think, ultimately planned around the ASEAN region. And this is because this is a system which is very much focused here on Southeast Asia, and where the advantages, I think, should be felt more here. I think Thailand sees this as an opportunity to get in ground level, which may well pay off in the future. You mentioned there the Belt and Road. Well, we're seeing other Chinese-led ventures here. I guess probably the most prominent one is the high-speed rail going down from Kunming through Laos, across Thailand, down through Malaysia, and ultimately to Singapore. Now, one of the things the BeiDou system does is guide driverless trains, high-speed trains, which could ultimately be on this line. Now, as yet, those lines are far from completed. But that's an example of how this could be fundamentally important to Thailand's economic future.
And have we seen successful commercial applications of this? And what are the future prospects?
Well, we haven't yet, but I think there is enormous potential. 70% of Chinese mobile phones are already running on this system. Well, if you look at mobile phone usage in Thailand, the fact that a lot of technology is looking towards 5G, again, which will benefit from this system. There is enormous potential here. We see Chinese brands, particularly in those telephony markets, becoming very prominent these days. So the potential is huge. I think the Thai government is also looking at a particularly difficult economic situation at the moment after the coronavirus crisis. They're looking at ways to get out of it, and as they have been looking at various economic problems in the last couple of years, and I think they've come to the conclusion that technology is the way to do it. Where are they looking for that technology? China, and this is obviously going to be a fundamental part of that. So I think there are opportunities here, as yet very hard to see any sign of them, but I think they're embedded in the systems that Thailand is looking towards. So inevitably, BeiDou will be a system that Thailand is using at some point in the future.
All right. We have Professor Geng on the line. Professor Geng, of course, many people see BeiDou as an alternative to GPS, but what are those unique features BeiDou can offer and GPS doesn't?
Personally, I don't think BeiDou is some kind of alternative to GPS. I think BeiDou system is an independent one. It's not going to be backup to GPS. At the moment, I think the BeiDou system can provide some special services like a short message communication, which can be used by remote users who don't have any kind of link to the local telephones or some other kind of internet services. They can use the BeiDou system to send some messages for some emergencies, for some kind of search and rescue, to help themselves to get help from the difficulties. And the second one is for BeiDou system, it has some kind of inter-satellite link. That means between any two satellites and two BeiDou satellites, they can measure the distance from each other. So in this way, we can only use the stations within China to maintain the stability of the BeiDou constellations without any other reliance on the overseas stations. Now the GPS and GLONASS and the Galileo system, they all use some globally distributed stations to maintain their orbits. So this is not easy and will increase the maintenance fees for that systems. So BeiDou will be quite unique because we use only the stations within China and it's fully under control, so we can have better reliability and continuity.
What about precision? You mentioned that the BeiDou system do not rely so much on geostations on the Earth, but does it provide as precise data about positioning as the others?
Yeah, the positioning services is subject to two factors. The first one is the quality of the signals. At the moment, the quality of the BeiDou satellite signals is very comparable to GPS and Galileo, and even surpass the quality of the GLONASS. And the second one is the positioning quality depends on the satellite geometry, I mean where your satellites are and how they cover your places. So in this way, the BeiDou system has 3 levels of orbit. We have the MEO satellites, we have the geosynchronous orbit satellites. So in this way, they can have better geometry compared to GPS and Galileo system, which are mainly composed of only middle orbiters. So I think the BeiDou can surpass the positioning capability of GPS and the Galileo system.
And Professor Gong, the system has a prototype used in the 1990s, and now we have a constellation in operation. How is BeiDou already used in China?
Now, I think everybody in China has begun to use the BeiDou signals, because if you have a cell phone which is manufactured by some Chinese vendors, then you will see your chipset within the cell phone have already incorporated the BeiDou signals inside. So then, whenever you want to go outside to find a place to eat something or go to some place to visit, and then you are using the BeiDou signals to position yourself. And secondly, is we know we have shared bicycles over the past several years, and then the shared bicycles in China all use the BeiDou signals for their navigation, to find their places, to detect whether the bicycles has been returned to some specific places that is required by the bicycle owners. So I think, and also, we are in our university, we are developing the ground-based augmentation system for BeiDou, and this system can provide some positioning services like centimeter level and decimeter level positioning accuracy. So they can be used for precision agriculture, especially for the lands over the western part of China, and also for the people in overseas, to help them to promote their efficiency in taking fish.
Because as an average user of devices, we don't understand how much technology is used in a single phone. For example, if I have a homemade brand like Xiaomi or Huawei, are they already using BeiDou navigation systems, or do they also include GPS as well?
They will also include GPS and Galileo signals as well, because the more signals you have from all varieties of global navigation satellite systems, you can enjoy the higher positioning accuracy and higher positioning reliability and continuity. Because the more in global positioning systems, the more satellites you have, the better positioning accuracy you are going to have. So I think in my cell phone, I can see that we can use some special software to detect how many satellites it has acquired.
Mm-hmm.
We find that it can acquire signals from all GNSS like GPS, Galileo, and BeiDou 2, BeiDou 3, and also GLONASS.
And we understand it is already used in 30 countries other than China, including Pakistan, Thailand, and Kuwait. What makes BeiDou attractive to these countries? Does it also offer services to other users in other parts of the world? Yeah,
especially because of the last BeiDou 3 satellite was launched this morning. So the BeiDou 3 constellation has been complete. It can provide global coverage services for any users at any corner on the globe. And for people in Pakistan or in some other areas, they enjoyed BeiDou because this is not an American system. It's not a European system.
Mm-hmm.
It's provided by China. It's provided by China. Global navigation satellite system, it can be taken as a very basic, very fundamental infrastructure for the station security and also for the economic growth. So you can never imagine someday you have to use GPS, but the American government shut it down, so then you'd have no choice. So I think the countries in Pakistan, the country like Pakistan or some other countries, they like to use BeiDou because of this is one of the major reasons for this.
And also, I want to talk about the convergence of different technologies, especially the BeiDou navigation with the fast communication like 5G we've been talking about. What does the completion of the system mean for the development of fast-speed communication and navigation around the world?
The integration of BeiDou signals and 5G signals is a very hot topic today. Even in the university, we have many people working on this topic. Its main objective for this integration is to help or assist in the self-driving vehicles. In autonomous driving, you can't have any latency of the signal. You can't have any latency of your positioning. So then in this case, the 5G can guarantee your correction data to augment the BeiDou signals can be received immediately after you just drive inside some areas that is difficult for the GLONASS signals to penetrate. For example, if you have any trees to block your signals you have inside the buildings, and then you can rely on the 5G data to have the correct data to be received, and also you can use 5G itself to augment your positioning in some shadowed areas. Because 5G itself can have the capability to position, to provide positions as well.
All right, thank you so much, Professor Gang. And we have Tony still on the line. So Tony, obviously this is a Chinese technology, so those countries must have an attitude towards Chinese technology, especially when they are facing the choices between GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, and BeiDou. What do ASEAN countries' attitude, do they think about these different technologies? And what is the criteria they are relying on to choose?
Well, I think all of them will be looking at this in rather different ways, but the fact of the matter is that China is the largest trading nation for most of the nations in this region. And I think, you know, it may be rather slow for them to take up the technology, but if you look at the proliferation of Huawei phones, you know, other Chinese tech being used both in infrastructure projects here, but also just by individuals. It's more affordable, it's easier to fix, it's more repairable. I think there's a natural inclination to go down that path. Now that said, I think they're certainly going to be hedging their bets. GPS is very widely used across Thailand. It's deeply embedded into lots of Thai infrastructure, and I think it'll take a while before people shift across. But to be frank, a system like this, I think for ordinary people, they don't really care what it is, as long as it works. They just have a fundamental need for those systems to be available. And once we shift across into 5G, there are all sorts of agricultural applications, things in which this is going to be fundamentally important, things like self-driving automobiles. And so I think people won't be too bothered about the system itself. They'll just want to know that it works and that it's cost efficient. But
it still comes to the issue of applicability, because of the convergence of different technologies, especially fast communication, agriculture, basic infrastructure, all these coming together will produce a lot of applications people might not imagine now. And China seems to be very innovative and future-oriented this way.
It does, I mean, absolutely. But I think, again, for ordinary users on the ground, you know, they're certainly going to be thinking about those things to a certain extent. But, you know, the actual mechanics of what's going on inside their mobile phone, they won't know much about. But I think one thing that is very important, and I was very struck on a reporting trip many years ago, more than a decade ago, frankly, in southern China, when I was talking to African investors about why they were using Chinese tech rather than that from Europe, America, or Japan. And they said universally, actually, and we spoke to a number of people when we were down there, they said that Chinese tech is cheaper, but it's also much easier to fix, to maintain. You don't have to buy a massive infrastructure with it. And I think this is something that, you know, where China has capitalized in its sort of technological advancements and selling that on to other nations, is it's not being part of an enormous system, an enormous infrastructure. And when we look at those things offered by the United States and Europe, they often come with caveats that you have to buy into a whole system that proves very costly and is very difficult to maintain, and it, you know, compromises your independence. So that in many ways is, I think, what countries in ASEAN will be looking at when they look at BeiDou.
Yep, open and inclusiveness. We have Sir Martin Stevenson on the line. Well, Sir Stevenson, according to a white paper issued by GNSS and LBS Association of China, the set navigation market in China has risen from 80 billion in 2011 to 345 billion in 2019. So what does this threefold increase say about the market?
Well, I think it just shows that positioning and navigation and timing is one of the critical infrastructures to modern economy and society. We rely on it every day for navigating around in the, in our cars, and of course we use it without knowing when we're making electronic payment transmissions and so forth. So I think we just see that now it is an essential part of our infrastructure, and that's why the market has grown so quickly.
And what is your impression of the Chinese BeiDou system? How do you feel about its technical advantage?
Well, I think if you compare it, there are a number of global navigation and timing systems now available. There's, of course, GPS from the US, there's Galileo from Europe. There are some regional systems like the quasi-Zenit system in Japan, in India, and also in Israel. So there are a number of these systems now available, and each of them has their specific characteristics. Now, the Galileo and GPS are rather similar, and BeiDou and the other systems provide a slightly different slant on each of the problems, and so by having this we have a degree of redundancy in the system, we have greater coverage, and the Chinese BeiDou system, of course, is one of the three big systems globally.
But of course it is still a latecomer in this field. It expects a lot more exposure to users. What do you think is the challenges for BeiDou to catch up?
Well, I'm not sure it's that much later because, to be honest, of course, GPS has been around for a long time. The Russian GLONASS, which I should have mentioned earlier, of course, has been around, but Galileo has become operational in the last couple of years, and so it's coming in on the sort of second wave of the development of navigation and timing systems. And I think that this is going to just provide additional capability to everybody wherever they are, because we're going to have more satellites to provide more position fixes and timing information.
I know you are a pioneer in the field of satellites and smaller satellites. What do you think of the level of satellite launch and satellite application now, and what is the future direction?
Sorry, in China or worldwide?
In China and the rest of the world.
Well, I think there's been quite a significant revolution, if you like, in the space industry in the last 3, 4, maybe 5 years, with the emergence of what has been dubbed new space, which has been founded around the development of small satellites that provide a much lower cost access to space, and this has stimulated a wide range of new applications. So a little bit like the smartphone created a whole range of apps which we never thought we needed. Small satellites have started to create a whole new market. Well, if you can, an example of this is providing much more resilient and shorter delivery times on Earth observation data. Is providing the new mega constellations are going to provide high-speed broadband, which is going to be much more globally, much more global coverage. So
and with a very small satellite in size, you mean?
Yes, these are satellites which typically are the size of a domestic refrigerator, something like that, or sometimes even smaller, down to the size of a shoebox. Now, these small satellites cannot completely replace the big spacecraft, but they actually provide, very much like the laptop replaced the very big supercomputers of the earlier eras. The small satellites are the sort of laptop of the modern era.
Okay, we're running out of time. Thank you very much, Sir Sweden, for your analysis. Thank you. And you've been watching Dialogue here on CGTN. I'm Zhu in Beijing. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.